There's your code for the door. That's one.
Okay.
So if you want to copy it, then take a picture of it. Hello, Angie. Hello, Terry.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hello.
Hello.
You want to let her know to
Back of them.
swing by. Is she in Parks and Rec? Is that what she said? Jim won't be here tonight. He's overseas or out of the country or something, different time zone. So won't be here.
How's the weather down there, Terry?
Unfortunately, and I know it's no comparison, you notice I'm wearing some layers here.
I see it, yeah, fleece,
It's
yeah.
very damp and cold. But the good news is by Monday, it's going to be 80.
Ah, good, yeah. Yeah, it's all relative when it gets, but damp and cold is miserable.
Yeah, it's been really damp. The wind was blowing the rain sideways today. But
Yeah,
overall, it's been very good.
that's right,
Very good.
that's right. Well, I'm glad it's gonna turn around for you.
Yeah, Deb's coming down tomorrow, Friday, so that's good.
Oh, yeah, that's really good then. She loves decent weather. That's right.
What's the temperature up in Vermont?
I just
Yeah,
came,
my computer says 15, but I don't know what the wind chill is.
I just came back from walking Dolly and I say it's brr, it's just cold.
Yeah.
It's
I'll take damp and rainy and whatever.
seriously, yeah, you still made a good decision. Yep.
Yeah. So I can't tell. So we have everyone present except for Jim. Jim, is it?
Yes, Jim is in a different time zone, couldn't make it.
Okay, so you're waiting for me to start things off?
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm a little late, but yeah.
All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. And any adjustment to the agenda?
Nope,
Not-
we don't have any.
Not hearing anything. Any public comment?
No public.
Very good. Moving on to bullet number 4 for the town meeting presentation. I guess I'll start that out with a question for you, Corinne and Lisa. What is the expectation specifically with time constraints?
I don't have any idea. Were we part of the meeting last year?
We had one slide last year that I think Carl spoke to.
It's on the select board agenda for February 3rd to discuss their presentation. I guess the assumption is that because the capital plan is new, they'll want something included. But at this point, it is an assumption. I don't, I guess we could look at the slides from last year.
Will we ask them what their at the January meeting, can we ask what their expectations are? Will the select board tell us, or is it up? I mean, do we get 5 minutes? Do we get?
Well, I don't think you get any time. I think it would be like you get one slide, or we have questions about this, or I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, they may not want to present it at all. It's because we didn't really change the budget. And what they're voting on is the budget. So by statute, they're supposed to address the articles that are to be voted on. And the article is the town budget. There's nothing on there about the capital improvement plan.
But the capital
But-
budget is included in the operating budget, so it's
Well, we didn't,
part of that.
kinda, yeah. Nothing changed though from year to year.
I'm sorry, but in terms of being able to, even though it isn't theoretically costing dollars for the town this year, this is an opportunity for us to just say, this is what the town the select board has been able to do with the dollars that it had available in some way. I mean, it's in some ways not quite a PR conversation, but it is, we have a capital budget for the first time in maybe our history, and here it is. And the cost may be, I don't know exactly what the cost is going to be total, but even if it's just a single slide, I'd advocate that the select board, tout their own horn a bit, or at least provide
Yeah,
information.
I agree. Angie, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I think we have an opportunity this is a continued ed, opportunity and transparency of what we've been doing. And I think we could take the previous slide and probably meld them into one slide, two at the very most, as an update. So if you want, I could take the first stab at it, just take the information that's in our previous presentation, the one that we did at the public hearing in December, and just simply meld the most important points into one, maybe two at the very most, but I think we have a great opportunity to inform and to educate.
Well, and they're gonna get questions about it, so it's better that they're prepared. I don't remember the process for developing the presentation, do you?
Well, Tim starts it by typing out
Oh, so he just takes the
The
ballot
warning,
items, the
yeah.
warning, so
And-
each slide is,
and then I took it from there last year
okay,
and added all the other stuff.
that's why I don't remember anything.
I was actually gonna suggest that I just,
Do it, cause,
Yeah.
well, and I think Carl usually, well, at a certain point, they all want packets and then they all start memorizing things and,
Right.
yeah. It's like cramming for a test.
thought I would do the same for them this year. So look and see what we did last year. But I was gonna recommend that what we did at the public hearing. That was what we could include for the,
The whole thing?
no, not the
Okay.
whole thing, but like Terry said, reduce it down to one or two
Mhm, yeah.
slides. At least show what's included in the operating budget for capital.
Yeah.
Expenditures.
I don't think they want to at least mention it.
Yeah,
You know, what people saying after the fact that, wait, you didn't hear anything about this, what, glossed right over it.
yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
So I can take that as the initiative and just draft a 1 or 2 pager and send it out to you folks for review. And then when is the next select board meeting?
February 3rd.
Pardon?
February 3rd at 5:15.
Okay, well, I mean, that's too easy. We can get a rough draft of that and send it, and maybe Corinne or at least you can just send it out to folks and say, hey, just looking for your feedback. And then is anyone planning on attending that 3 Feb meeting? Or Corinne, you'll be there anyways, is that correct?
Mhm. Yep.
Would you mind bringing that to them?
Not at all.
And therefore we're teeing it up. We're we have the opportunity, we're teeing it up, and then if they want to adjust it, tweak it, that's their prerogative. But we'll have given them something in advance to review and make adjustments to if they deem necessary.
Okay.
So, I guess a general question does that sound like a good way ahead?
Yes.
Yep.
Angie's shaking her head, yep.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I'm just having a hard time seeing there, but okay, so I'll take that as a go. I'll merge into 1 or 2 and send it out back to folks and get some feedback and go from there. Very good. Anything else, excuse me, before we move off the town meeting presentation?
So last year, I'm just looking at the slides from last year. We had one slide that discussed the kickoff. We had the kickoff April 10th.
Right.
So that's what we talked about, and that everybody was welcome to come. So that's what our presentation was last year.
Yep. Yeah, and I think we can do just an update here for this one.
Yep.
And again, I think Carl even read through that slide, if I'm not mistaken, last year, or he may have turned it over. I can't remember specifically, but regardless, one of us will speak to it. Too easy. Okay, anything else in the town meeting presentation? Next bullet, review the CIP approval process, share ideas for improvement, after approval of the first CIP and identify future goals. So I'm gonna open it up to the floor here for anybody specifically has comment.
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen.
Is this the approval process that went to the select board? Is that what we're talking about? The approval process of? What's the approval process to,
I think that just means the whole kit and caboodle, like we've been through it once. What do we want to do before we start our? Oh,
I have maybe because I sort of live it with the library committee, a couple of things that I know that the library committee could do better, and maybe I could just bring that up for our consideration. Is that all right, Terry?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think we'll get better with the timeline. That clearly is the number one for all of us to do, but for the library, we spend a lot of time trying to track down the vendors and the process and getting vendors to respond and finding vendors that are approved and then going to the select board to get it approved. So one of my suggestions would be maybe as a collateral to our committee and maybe as just a helpful product of it, that we develop over time a list of, and I'll use the word approved contractors lightly, but a list of contractors that we have used or service people that we have used in the town among all of our owned entities that have been vetted in the past. So at least we have a list of people that we can go to for plumbing or electricity or minor repairs or some, carpentry, those sorts of things, which we tend to run into a lot. Whether it's fixing roofs or fixing, driveways or carpeting, it's always something. We spend a lot of time just churning through that on a month-to-month basis. It takes up, a good chunk. We move too slowly, I guess. And that's anyway, just the thought is more succinctly say, develop a list of potentially preferred, or at least a list of contractors and service people that are maybe available for the town of North Yarrow. And that's my recommendation as an ancillary to what we do, to have it available on our website for our departments, or have it available somewhere.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, any feedback?
I mean, is that stupid? Is that reasonable? Corinne, you and Lisa have
no,
them-
I think it's a great idea. I'm just trying to figure out how to, yeah, I can work on that.
The only caution I throw out there, because unfortunately, as we live in that day and age, we have to be careful on showing preference. So we wouldn't want to put preferred. I think we need to just say, here's a potential list, right? And as long as we have more than one or two or three, and then we could add more contractors, we could add more plumbers,
Right.
add more,
right,
candlestick makers.
Right.
But we have to maybe, and absolutely put a caveat right up top, because you know how that goes.
Yeah.
We are in no way, shape, manner, or form showing preference for any of these. These are just, we know that these are some vendors who have supported other capital projects in the town of North Yarrow.
yes. We
Then
do
it
that.
kind of keeps us out of the,
We do that. We
out
do
of
that
that
in
area.
I'm sorry. We do that in hospitals all the time for home health, referrals and things like that. We have to be absolutely neutral on anything they would recommend, but we do have an obligation. And here's an example for us for the library. We spent a lot of time trying to find someone to fix our roof. I think this is going on the third year almost. And we finally found someone, only to take it to the select board, and someone very much not more knowledgeable than us said, "Oh, we don't think they have workers' comp insurance, so they're disqualified." So there's two parts to this, I think, now that I'm thinking out loud. One is for the library, and perhaps a greater group, to have a form that allows us to make sure we touch all the bases in terms of what's required from a contract. But secondly, to have that list of vendors that, as you said, Terry, have worked with North Yarrow.
So let me throw this out there. The community hall has a list of vendors. They have a list of maintenance that is done every year, and a schedule of maintenance, and who the vendors are that have worked on this building and they've worked with in the past. So they have a list with the contacts, information, everything. The water department has the same thing. They have a list of, they do call it preferred contractors that have
They're vetted.
They're vetted, yeah, exactly. They're vetted and they've signed a contract and they have proof of insurance and all this other things. So each department kind of has their own. And maybe we can help you do that for the library.
But I would say, I think that's a good idea. I would say that we should have a kind of a general list for the town and let the community hall keep theirs, but that maybe that list, if they're agreeable, becomes a broader list.
Yeah,
I mean, the slippery slope is like with the water, the reason they have a preferred contractor list is because they have internal policies. And they
Right.
have very specific needs based on infrastructure and state laws.
Timing.
Yeah, and timing. So their list does not want to be incorporated with the towns, like. And then we have to, I think this might be a broader than what this committee is for, because the purchasing policy also outlines certain parameters for when you will use different types of vendors. So each board really needs to be aware of what their specific needs when they're going to look for a vendor. And they are gonna from board to
Right.
board.
But I think
then-
I think that's reasonable, but I still would argue and politely say that there could be a master list of vendors that will be available and have been used. And I'm talking about general vendors, not the specifics like the water department but it seems like maybe it's because the expertise isn't on the library board specifically to do those things, but it seems like we have a resource that we're not using fully. If we could somehow develop a bit of a master list, I don't think it'd be hard. And anyway, just to think about, I don't want to take up the whole meeting, but I don't want to make it harder than it is, you know,
Yeah.
complicated.
Angie, I appreciate that, but I'm questioning the role of this committee in that process. It seems like out of our scope.
Yeah, maybe it isn't this committee. I was just thinking because we are the ones that are saying, let's put together a capital plan. And oh, by the way, to do the capital plan, you need to follow here's what capital means and here's what it means to do it. And to do that, if you're doing a capital project, refer to, section, whatever it might be for the, procurement process or just so there's some place that new board members or new people can walk into something and see it available to them. Like, okay, here's the process by which we request. I think we have to provide supporting documents to finish the work, I guess is my point. And maybe that isn't this committee's work, but I don't know where you find that. I try to think of new people coming on board and trying to figure out, what is the process to get this and this fixed. We can call Corinne and call Lisa, but that's always helpful, but it seems to be that we shouldn't always have to do that. That's all.
I don't respectfully suggest that that's outside the scope of this committee.
Sure.
Because you're talking about procurement policy, which is a town and a select board issue, not this.
Yeah, no, all right.
Yeah, and I mean, I hear what you're saying, Angie. I hear it loud and clear, and you're absolutely right. And I mean, from a practical standpoint, it would take us, what, half an hour to like do an export of all the vendors and accounts payable and sort them by a certain vendor type and then give it to you. But I mean, projects are so and like malleable, like, I look at what the water board's going through right now for their water storage tank, and we're never gonna build another one of those in North Hero, at least.
No, I think I'm making this too complicated for all of you, and we can finish this, but it's just, instead of trying to spend, a year figuring out who's the right vendor to do this one,
Right.
put carpet in. Someone else probably had to do it, or to fix a roof, someone else has had to do it. And it's just, I think it's just something that, we've missed and doesn't belong with this committee, and I'll stop it, but we have the information somewhere, but it isn't, and it's general, it's not specific. We would never, anyway, that's okay. I don't agree, that's not our job, but
Well, no,
it's a miss.
You
Yeah.
brought it up. You guys obviously need some support, and that's, larger towns have facilities managers, they have full softwares, and we're a little town struggling to try and do what big towns do and limited resources.
I just think I'll just talk to the community hall committee and see what vendors they use for different things, and why would we recreate the wheel if we can start there first? We just say it's just more efficient if you have a list of already, instead of trying to figure out who does what.
Yeah.
And
And Lisa
when-
and Art are there to support too.
Yeah.
We can,
Yeah.
and we're always we
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
meetings,
yeah.
like, yeah.
yeah, just trying to make it easier for the next person that does the
Mhm.
building work. So thank you for indulging me. I still don't think I'm wrong, but thank you for indulging me. I'm teasing.
For what you bring to the table, it's the least, like, we should all be able to bring our thoughts here and, yeah.
Get them smashed to the ground. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
So as it relates to bullet number 5 for the, again, we're talking about improvements here. Let's just look at the list that we have. Increase the threshold amount. Is that still a valid suggestion?
I mean, it was put on this, we decided in May after the kickoff meeting to start tracking some of these things. So this is a SharePoint document I pulled up this afternoon.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I just want to
And-
review them, Corinne, and see is
Yeah.
based on where we, the process we went through now.
Oh, so does the board
Is-
still think we should pursue
Yeah, is that
Yeah.
still a valid suggestion, or do we remove it?
Was there a proposal on what that threshold would be?
I still think it's valid. I heard that repeatedly as we went through the process too. Parks and Rec and other boards were like 10 grand's too low.
How did that number come up initially? I mean, who, was it the auditor or the accountants or?
I think Terry and I took it from an example of.
Based on other examples, yeah.
And
Some
of
were
course,
higher, some were lower.
With-
And then when we talk to the select board, so, okay, so 1, we'll leave that on there and we can talk about that. 2, present the plan in the narrative format. Would you mind explaining that, Corinne?
Yeah, when did, I forget why we reached out to Northwest Regional Planning, but at one point we reached out to Northwest Regional Planning and they sent us the capital budget handbook. And Lisa and I both read through and kind of howled on it. I think that's where a lot of these suggestions come through. But when I was reading that handbook, their outline for a narrative for a capital plan read more like a narrative. And then when I was researching how other towns were warning their public hearing, I found that other towns were using it and after having been through the process and how we've kind of struggled to present this to the public, like I was, dealing just the narrative. And I probably, to really flesh this out, should have examples for you. We can get there if you guys like the idea. And this is honestly something that maybe not even this coming year, but thinking about, I'm hoping every year this gets a little better and a little more polished, maybe 5 years in, we'll like totally have it down. That as we work through this, we consider a document that's perhaps fleshed out. So right now, it's really just the 2 pages. It's the capital plan, that's a spreadsheet, and it's the budget, that's really like 5 lines of really succinct information. And if people want to know more, they have to go to our website and look at the inventories and go through the minutes and kind of pull it all together. Whereas the narratives I've looked through, they're only a few pages long, but they kind of talk about why a board suggested an issue and then why we decided it was a priority. It only takes 2 sentences, but it's all there. So
This is an evergreen document that stays out there, kind of as a document used by the board and the town as a reference tool to have to direct people to this discussion, maybe it gets updated every year, is that
yeah,
What do you
so it
think?
would be an annual document and it would really be,
to accompany the,
I think it would encompass
Financial-
the plan. It's kind of like you start talking and then you have the spreadsheet and then you talk a little more and then you have the budget and then you kind of wrap it up in a bow. Just to kind of flesh it out.
So you're really talking about a summary narrative of how the plan came about.
Yeah.
You're not referring to, of which we know we
We've
need to
got-
update it, the actual
yeah.
program, which is policy and guidance.
Yeah. I guess that's why I put on here approval process, because I kind of was thinking we've been through it once. What are the things that we all would like to just maybe see change as we start the next go around? But yeah, I mean, you have to look, like, right now, if you look at a line item of what's in our budget, and it just says library addition, to be financed this way. It really has what's required by statute to tell the voters. But it doesn't say anything about why, you know, so you have to look at the project submissions and you have to look at the ranking. And then you kind of have to have been a little more involved in the process to pull it all together. And the
Okay.
narratives I saw were just, I don't know, they were nice.
And where do the narratives end up? Like on the website? So people can read them, or are they gonna be in the town report? or
I
is it
was
gonna be-
imagining more like the town report, like looking at what was in there this year. I was thinking for our first year, this isn't a whole lot of,
So are we limited in terms of the number of pages?
I mean, they're not long. The ones I was looking at was like 3 pages today.
Weren't we limited to 1 page?
No, we've got 4.
4,
Well,
okay.
there's no like hard and fast limit. The overall report has to be 140 pages. And every
The
year,
town
That's you?
report.
yeah, no, that's what we pay for. We have a contract. That's what-
I mean, you can have 250.
Good
but you
enough,
gotta pay for it.
You can, yeah, so you can really have as many as you want, but so, and it fluctuates from year to year. At least decided this year to combine a lot of the fund reports and kind of gave us a lot of room. And so, and we came in a little under this year. Last year we were over, so I was really pushing for people to stay down this year. So when I send out and ask for reports, I say 1 page, and we submitted a 1-page report and worked hard on that, but then there was the plan, which is
Yeah.
2 pages, and the budget, which
Yeah.
is 1 page, and in my mind, I'm thinking if we do a narrative, that's 4 pages, and it's all ties it together and it will flow better. But potential, it's not, I mean, my heart will not be broken. This is not an idea that takes traction.
I'm not opposed to it. I think maybe if we have looked at an example, I can't remember it, but.
Yeah, no, we haven't.
But maybe looking at an example, we certainly have time in, you know, in terms of a year from now.
Okay.
I think at this point, we're just deciding if it stays on the list or not.
I would say that.
Okay, well,
The next item there was the 6-year span for the plan. This year, we ended up doing the extra year because of the overlap. Is that still a valid to do 6, or to simply do the future 5-year plan?
So that capital budget handbook from the Northwest Regional Planning says the upcoming year and then 5 years out. So it's actually a 6-year plan.
And after having been through it, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't have before we started, to me, anyway. But yeah, I could see how,
And this year, because we kind of had 2 years, you know, we started it. You know, we had kind of that, like you said, Terry, that 1 year because it carried over. And so I think for the next one, we have fiscal year 27 and then 5 years out, right?
mhm.
So 28 through 32.
Right, okay. That next suggestion, earlier public hearing, I would suggest we change the preface of that and then use that as an example, is to adjust the timeline. More of a broader suggestion, which is adjust the timeline to include, you know, example given as earlier public hearing. That's my suggestion. And we're going to talk about the timeline here a little bit as well. Increased communication with planning commission. Yep. I think that's a no-brainer based on what we ran into. Does everybody concur with that?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else just real rough over catching the process or the revisions here? Or if not, we'll move on to the next item. Well, actually, under number 5, under the agenda, it says, and identify future goals.
Go
In
back and-
general,
I'm sorry, may I go back and ask a question about the capital budget timeline? And this is for multi-year projects, or maybe a project that would not necessarily finish in the time frame that we thought it may have. And will we have any, so it goes back to the counting of years. And I don't know if it goes on the list of at all to talk about in the future, but do we have any idea how we would manage that?
Can you restate the question? Nancy? I'm
Yes, do we
sorry.
have any, for projects that may extend beyond the 1 year timeframe? Unintendedly, but they may encounter an issue, or there may be a problem with the vendor, or finding a vendor, or whatever it might be, that would extend the time frame for what will be a 1 year allocation for a project. Like you have to spend the capital money in this 1 year, in fiscal, 25, 26. Is there any discussion that we need to have relative to some of those projects potentially, not on purpose, but potentially leaking into years going forward?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, via the process, that would be because part of it, we review what is in process right now, what was approved, what is in
Yeah.
process. And it was supposed to be done, using this hypothetical, supposed to be done this past or this current fiscal year, didn't happen for whatever reason. Well, then it becomes a continuation, a rollover into as we discuss the ongoing projects, right? And there's maybe updates to budget. More money came in through grants, more money came in through donations, whatever the case may be. So it's simply updated, correct me if I'm wrong, in the next review. And it is continued into well, in this case, it sounds like the budget, not so much the plan, because if we're in the 1 year window, the budget for that following year, because it didn't get closed out during the last year. That's my understanding of the way we really should work. Please correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody disagrees.
So I think that makes sense. If there is an unintended increase in the capital project, handled the same as, how do we handle that through a new process, through the process? Or is that something to discuss? If you get halfway through something, I don't know what it would be. Oh, instead of the roof of the library isn't even a capital project, but halfway through for what we're a capital project, halfway through it, the contractor says, oh my God, this is a real problem. I'm going to have to do this. And that means adding another $10,000. Is that, I guess the question would be for us to consider how we do that with an existing project with a cost increase in a project. Maybe just to discuss in the future, but how do we manage that? Or how do we account for that?
Angie, would that come through when we ask the respective departments or boards for updated information about all of their projects?
It certainly may if the timing's right? I mean, if it hits if it happens to hit the
I remember us talking about this.
Yeah, I don't remember what we said.
I can't remember either, but I recall that maybe providing information to and maybe some of them are already doing this. I think some of them already have, but as new information comes in, whether it's cost or timing or whatever, were they providing some of the information to you, Lisa?
Not necessarily, but I think as part of our yearly review, when we do those, when we go out and ask them,
Specifically,
part of our process was going to be to see where we are with the prior projects
right.
and true those up. Either they're done, they're not done, they're
Yeah,
continuing on, they're two times more than we thought,
Yep.
That's all part of the initial.
And we should do that whether there's an approval process or not. Like, say the 10 grand needs to happen in the next 2 weeks, so you go to the select board and ask for some contingency fund money. It never has to come through us, but we want to know how well our projects are, how great we're planning, basically. So we do want to keep up with that regardless of how each project moves.
And maybe it's just a matter of letting everybody know that when you have a change, like the water department, we finally got final numbers, I mean, you were on here, so we know, but there's a board that there is a change, they need to let us know
Sooner than later.
sooner rather than later, yeah.
Yeah, it can't be static. It has to be a dynamic process.
Yeah,
You can't wait for a point in time to report it, but to report it as we know it or it occurs.
So maybe that's something that we should just reaffirm if we haven't done it already when we send out the information for this upcoming year, is that in the future, should there be any type of these type of change that you mentioned, Angie, that letting this committee know through Lisa and or Corinne as soon as possible and not
Yeah.
waiting for the annual update.
Right.
and some of it we'll know that when they go to in front of the select board,
Right.
or, we're gonna know.
You want to know
So-
before, yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to know before that.
Okay. Anything else on bullet number 5? Number 6, capital program updates. I haven't touched the program, i.e. the narrative that provides the policy and guidance, 13, 14 page, whatever the number. And since we made some changes to terminology a while ago, I think we need to do that here in the very near future. I don't know if anybody has taken a stab at that. But it would be time to update the narrative program that talks about policy and guidance. So that's certainly one of our to-dos here in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I think tonight, one of the more important things with that is timing, because when I look back through the minutes, we had talked about waiting till after March when we had, really put a pin in this being a full cycle. But we also need the opportunity to go before the select board and get changes approved before we start the next round. So we don't want to wait too long.
Right. I will, again, take a stab at doing some updates to the program. I don't think they'll be tremendous. I mean, we've got the 90 some odd percent, solution in there, whatever that number is, and then make some updates to it accordingly. I'll take a stab at that and then again, send it back out so you folks can provide comment, and then we can review it next meeting. And then we should be getting close to having that program up to date.
And we should meet, Terry, and talk, because partly why we need to wait till after March is the select board is contemplating not carrying through with some of the policies that are kind of encompassed in the program, the capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Sounds like an important thing.
Yeah, so maybe I should pull it up.
But while you're looking for that, I just want to make sure I understand something you also said, Corinne. Does the select board have to approve, like, I guess it's not clear to me, like, what exactly they have to approve or want to approve or don't care about? Like, for example, the timeline. If we were gonna move things up by 2 months, let's just say, is that something the select board has to approve?
The timeline for this committee?
Yes. Okay, so that's why I was a little confused by, like, what types of things the select board would need to, any changes we made
Well,
that they need to approve.
even though well, let me see if I can find it. The program, the plan, master plan, 2. This one. I'm gonna have it up ready to go, but. So this is our current, we're gonna change it from plan to program, so we'll know this is kind of like the guiding documents that the select board has
Right.
approved. Encompassed within this are policies, so capital improvement budget policy, debt policy, and maybe the one I'm thinking of is not encompassed in this. But the select board was reluctant to create a general capital reserve fund for the whole town. So they declined to do that. They actually had created a draft policy that would govern such a fund if it were created. And we were discussing with the select board creating that in March. They declined to do that. So that policy needs to be formally revoked. And we need to be aware of that when we're updating how the program talks about capital reserve funds. They decided to let each department continue to maintain and use a reserve within their department. So basically every department, so now poor Lisa has 12 funds to monitor rather than one large pot for the town. That needs to be somehow explained in this, but we should wait till it's really final. And then the other thing is,
I'm sorry before you move off of that one. So that means, therefore, if I understand it correctly, then that if something comes up and they need some money and some committee sitting on a big pot, they can't touch it.
well, select board can pretty much well, that's really glib. I was gonna say, that, I mean, the budget by statute belongs to the select board. Everything except the water, they have ultimate authority over. They have decided to, delegate authority over certain sections to departments, but ultimately they can override what it, so the planning commission could say, we're doing this boardwalk, and they could say, no. They won't, they never have in North Hero, they're good at not micromanaging, of course, current, and you never know when people get elected in. But having a reserve, the difference with that is the voters have voted on it. So the library has a capital reserve. The voters have said we want that to be for capital improvements for the library. The select board cannot override that. You know, this, you
But
know.
the- but the select board can, does the select board have to approve the expenditure from the reserve fund?
Well,
It depends on how much. There's a the procurement policy and purchasing policy. So
yeah, the select board kind of delegates all of it through their policies, so the library should be following the select board procurement policy, and this, it's set by the select board.
But they're
Um,
like, but if it's a capital if it's a capital reserve fund, isn't it dictated by the definition of capital? Which is 10,000 or more, which requires approval.
based
Yeah.
on the purchasing policy.
Yeah,
But based upon the cost of the project, whether it's, carpeting or a new building,
but the other thing is they're setting up a contingency reserve fund. And they're looking to the future where they may have a balanced budget policy. And so there's a lot of discussion now, should we have a contingency reserve fund policy, which may or may not affect what this board does, but in the beginning was anticipated to interact with the capital reserve fund in a way that we would need to have kept up with it, and now the capital reserve fund is not there. I'm not sure if that connection will hold, that the board needs to keep track of it. But in the beginning, it was kind of like a big vision that all kind of filtered through the capital plan. And it's diverging a bit as decisions are made. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Very interesting.
so as the select board makes decisions in March, we'll want to keep those in mind. So Terry, right now to go through an update plan to program where it should be based on what we've learned, and things like that would be great, but we probably don't want to go too gung ho with deep changes.
Okay.
We really know what the
Yep.
select is gonna do.
Okay, yep, that's too easy. I mean, we can make minor edits and then stand by to stand by.
Do you have anything to add to that, Lisa? She's been a part of all these discussions.
Okay. Anything else for bullet number 6? Number 7, the timeline review. I think if we spend a little bit of time on this tonight, we can probably make, while it's coming fresh in our mind. Corinne, would you mind pulling, or Lisa, whoever's sharing?
Not at
the
all. It'll take me a
current
minute. I
timeline?
can't up in advance either, but.
And I'll talk aloud while Corinne's pulling it
Is
up.
the timeline oh,
Yeah,
here it
it's
is,
G.
isn't it? Okay.
Appendix G.
Timeline by quarters. And operating budget timeline. Let's try this one. Isn't quite look right to me.
There was one that had all the colors.
I'm in SharePoint.
Yeah,
Is that-
appendix G.
Yeah, I think there were 2 of them in there. One was broken down by quarter, which was not quite as
Okay.
granular, which I don't think that's the one we want open. We want the one that goes by month.
I got it.
suggestion we may want to, and I'm just throwing this out there, start from the bottom, meaning the furthest out, because we realize in some of those cases, we need to back it up, right? I think we realized that we needed to back a few things up in order to have enough time for the select board to review and for us to review and to do the respective hearing. Okay. Anybody see, okay, in what I see there, lines 28 through 31. All of our work is prior to that. So first kind of operating budgets. Now, we had a hearing in December. December 2nd, I believe, was the day that we actually did our hearing.
And that's not on here. That's not on, I couldn't find it on the timeline.
So we would need to insert that.
Wow, that's interesting, because we'd always contemplated a hearing.
No.
Huh.
And so that was the first week in December. Was that still, because our requirement, I think you corrected that, Corinna, when you went back, our requirement is only to do one hearing,
Yes.
not two.
Well, what messed me up was you have one hearing and it can be your final hearing as long as there are no changes. So I don't think what we realized is when you present the plan to the select board, they then have to warn it. So they formally accept it and they warn it. You're not allowed to make any changes. And we were in a position where we had to make changes. So I think we need to be more aware and perhaps work into the timeline, the ability to make changes. And technically, once it's been warned, you have the hearing. If anybody wants to make changes, you make the changes, you have a second hearing. You're not supposed to really
Right.
make changes.
I think the operative word there is substantive. It's like Carl even stated when you're going to have some minor tweaks based on estimates and stuff like that. We're not changing these a substantial portion of the plan. There may be edits based on a new estimate, right? But for the most part,
Well, this conversation gets very circular very fast because plans change, budgets change, the whole thing ends up changing for all practical intents and purposes. But the
Right.
plan that's presented to the public, so let's think of it this way. The plan that passes the final public hearing is the plan that'll be in the town report.
mhm.
So, if we have a public hearing and somebody raises their hand and says, you're 50 grand off there, we have to have a second hearing if we want to make that change. So, a lot of, and I was aware of this kind of through memory with with helping the select board through approvals of regulations. So I kind of hip check. I forget the exact series of events that happened, but I was telling everybody 2 hearings, remembering how practically in the past, we've always had 2 hearings for these types of things because it's the only way to really incorporate the ability to make changes. And when it came right down to it and I read the statute, I was like, oh, no, you only need 1, but that just limits your ability. And so that's really what we have to decide. Do we want to work in 2 hearings and plan on the ability to make changes, or do we want to be optimistic and assume we won't need to do that? And a lot of the towns, when I was, researching how do other towns warn this, they just assumed 2 hearings. And so you have the first hearing, there's no changes. Great, we're a month ahead of schedule. But if you haven't worked in your timeline, a second hearing, and then you need to make changes and you're out of time.
And how long do we need between the 2 hearings? 30 days to warn it?
Well, there's a 15-day warning period.
15 days.
So if you want time to have, so you take in comment and then have a meeting and then bring it back to the select board. You could do that pretty quickly if everybody's willing to meet and have special meetings. But I think 30 days is typical just to allow the 15-day warning period and time for boards to process changes. So, technically only 1 meeting is required. And as we get better, 1 meeting may be all it takes. I mean, ideally, this kind of becomes like I don't know what's the right word. But factory line where we just plug and play, all the boards are used to it and they submit their project submissions on time and.
I'm fine with putting two in.
So still keep the first week of December for the second one, and then
Yeah.
back up a month for the first week of November for the first one.
Yeah, and like I said, if the first one, everybody's like, it's great, then we just don't have the second one.
You just don't warn, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just in our timeline.
So we
Um,
just do an insert between lines 26 and 27 and add second hearing with a parenthetical, if applicable or if required. And that'll end up being a yellow line or box. I forgot how we've got it coded. Do we need to put CIP public hearing just so it's,
Um.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Is there a place on up above where the first public hearing is line 27 the second one or the first one?
That's the first week of December. That's the second one.
Okay.
And then we still, because there was no public hearing in the original timeline, so we got to add both. So if we back the first hearing up to the first week of November, when do we present to the select board? Because that has to be before the hearing.
I'm sorry, Corinne. I'll get to the police. I was just thinking about this. If line 27 is just say public hearings. And then on column
Mm.
J, we put an X,
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
column, whatever,
Oh, yeah, okay.
There you go.
There
Like
you
it.
go.
I love it. Yep,
Nice.
and we'll put as required or as
and
needed.
needed if necessary or something.
So then when are we going, because we had presented it to the select board on the first week of November. Second week in November, final presentation of CIP to select board. We gotta back that up. Because we have to present it to the select board before we can do the hearing. We have to present it to the planning commission before we present it to the select board.
That was the
Mhm.
stuff I forgot this year was formally getting it to the planning commission.
Mm.
can you scroll up to what the last CIP requirement was that we've got identified?
We have presentation to the select board. We want to add,
So that's gotta be in October.
If there are changes made to after going to the select board. And we have a public hearing, if there are changes made, does it have to go back to the select board?
well, yes, because technically it's the select board holding the hearing. You know, this,
Okay.
so we've done the work. And then we kind of say, hey, here's our plan informally at a meeting. Do you guys have any issues? And if they say no, then they can formally, just maybe basically take it from
Yeah.
us and then they're having the hearing. We end up running it because we know it,
Right.
but it's their meeting. So, okay, this timeline is confusing me. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think it's because there's so much in here that now that I've been through this once, we don't really need to know.
Salaries, personnel.
Do we need to know why they're like,
We had originally asked. They wanted to see the budget timeline and how everything fell within the select board budgeting timeline. So that's why all those lines are in there.
did we find that useful at all this year?
I didn't look.
I mean, I'm thinking about
Guess
deleting all
not.
these, all these lines and just.
It's not real dependencies on.
Just,
process.
you know, save, yeah, blank them up.
Item.
But a line for the planning committee would be helpful. I know it's kind of buried in the, not buried, but it's listed among all the other approvals.
Well, actually, I have a suggestion in the, as far as brevity and time management. Corinne, Lisa, would you mind taking a look at this? And if you want to come up with a version where we hide those that are listed as select board under column B, which is select board, and and then just leave the ones that are listed as CIP in there,
Mhm.
or the CIP committee. And like I said, Angie mentioned, we got to insert the one for meeting with the planning commission, et cetera, and then send out a draft for that. That would be my suggestion instead of continuing maybe tonight, just because then you'll have a clean look at it and you've got it right there in front of you. Would you mind doing that?
No, I just have one question. At the top, the items at the top, so the first one is introduce CIP to department review requirements. Are we doing that every year, or is that just a first time thing? Can that come out, or is that
I
staying in?
think that line can come out myself.
Agreed? So it was just a one time as a kickoff.
Yeah, one and done. Yep.
Okay. And then, how about sending the guidance?
That's probably,
Oh, but that's number 3.
Right, so it says update fleet and stuff, but it says send guidance. It's probably not a bad idea, given new board members.
Every year you're gonna send them the forms and what needs to be done, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about.
It's a good
yeah, it
reminder.
becomes repetitive.
Yeah.
And it maintains the accuracy of what's in there.
Yes,
It may only take them 5 minutes and they may say, we've had no change.
yep, but they get it every year.
It's done, right?
Okay, that's all I had. I can,
Mhm.
yep, I can work on that.
Yeah, and then we can just take a look at that and do a final tweak on the next meeting. And then I think we've got an updated timeline.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions about that? Next item on there is our future agenda items. I think we've identified one there, which is to review the final updates of the timeline. We want to review the draft 1 or 2 slides for the town info meeting. It's too early to review the program updates, as you mentioned, Corinne, so we'll hold off on that here. Anybody think of anything else specific for the agenda for next time?
I don't know, this maybe this is something for Lisa and Corinne to take a look at, but it is the forms that we did send out to the departments. Do any tweaks need to happen to them? You know, Form D and C, and I don't even remember the names of them all, but
Yeah, that's a good point. We could review the guidance so it's ready to roll, Angie.
yes,
Or
Yes.
appendices A through
keep evolving it, yeah.
D,
Yeah.
A through D respectively. We had a cover letter that went, I think, with ABC, and then we
Yeah.
had a cover letter that went with D respectively.
Yeah.
And yeah, good point. So we could review those. That shouldn't take too long. Again, we put a lot of the effort in. Now it'll be
Right, maybe nothing, yeah.
fairly simplified. Yep. Anything else? Those are the things I can think of for right now, Corinne, for the next agenda.
Good start. This will be our quiet
Anything-
time.
Pardon?
This will be our quiet time here.
Anything else from anyone? If not, seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye,
Aye,
Aye.
very good. Well, stay warm.
don't get frostbite, Terry.
Right.
All right,
Good night.
bye-bye.
Yeah.